The year is 1520. Half the known world kneels before a single throne. From the gates of Vienna to the shores of the Indian Ocean, from the sands of North Africa to the mountains of the Caucasus, one empire stretches its shadow across 3 continents. This is not Rome. This is not Alexander's dream made flesh. This is the Ottoman Empire at the zenith of its power and within its borders. 60 million souls wake each morning under the crescent moon banner of Sultan Suleiman, soon to be called the Magnificent. But magnificence, as always, is built on the backs of ordinary people whose names history will never record. Dawn breaks over Constantinople. The city the Ottomans call Constantine, the jewel seized from Byzantium just 70 years prior. The first light touches the dome of Hagia Sophia, now crowned with minarets that pierce the sky like lances. The muezzin's call echoes across the Golden Horn, that ancient waterway separating the old world from the new. The sound rolls over terracotta rooftops, through narrow streets still damp with night fog, past wooden houses that lean toward each other like old men sharing secrets. This is a city of 600,000 people, the largest metropolis in Europe, perhaps in the world. It smells of brine and horse manure, of bread baking in clay ovens, of spices carried from lands so distant their names sound like myths. In the poorest quarters near the city walls, a porter named Mehmet rises from his straw mat. He is 40 years old, which makes him ancient by the standards of his class. His hands are gnarled like olive wood, scarred from decades of hauling cargo from the docks to the bazaars. His wife Ake is already awake, coaxing embers back to life in their small brazier. Their home is a single room in a building that houses 12 families. The walls are thin enough to hear the coughing of the elderly man next door, the crying of the infant upstairs, the whispered prayers of the Jewish family who fled Spain and found refuge here under Ottoman law. The empire's tolerance is not born of sentiment. It is pragmatic. Jews bring banking skills and trade connections. Christians pay the jizya tax and serve in specialized roles forbidden to Muslims by tradition. Armenians control much of the skilled craftwork. Greeks dominate maritime commerce. The empire is a mosaic, and every piece serves a purpose. But tolerance has limits, boundaries marked by law and custom, by who may wear which colors, who may ride horses through certain streets, whose testimony holds weight in which courts. Mehmet steps into the street as the city awakens. A water seller passes, his copper cups clinking like small bells. The cry of Suvar, Suvar, mingles with the bleating of goats being driven to slaughter. 2 streets over, in the district where the silk merchants have their shops, the morning looks entirely different. Here, buildings rise 3 and 4 stories high, their upper floors jutting out over the street, creating corridors of shadow. The windows are latticed with intricate wooden screens that allow women to observe the street without being observed. Behind those screens, the wives and daughters of wealthy merchants breathe air perfumed with rosewater, sleep on cushions stuffed with goose down, eat figs preserved in honey. The empire's heart beats in rhythms of hierarchy. At the apex sits the Sultan, God's shadow on earth, the Caliph of Islam, the protector of the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. Below him, the Grand Vizier manages the vast machinery of state. Below them, the pashas govern provinces larger than most European kingdoms. The Janissaries, those soldiers taken as boys from Christian families, converted to Islam and trained to be the empire's most elite warriors, stand apart from normal society. Celibate until retirement, loyal only to the Sultan, feared by everyone. They receive regular salaries when European soldiers survive on plunder. They train daily when others train seasonally. They are the reason Vienna will soon tremble. But on this morning in Constantinople, Mehmet knows nothing of Vienna. He knows the weight of a cargo net full of wool bales. He knows the route from the Galata docks to the Grand Bazaar by heart. knows which streets are steepest, which corners hide loose stones that could turn an ankle. He joins other porters at the docks as the first ships arrive. These vessels come from everywhere: Venetian galleys with holds full of glass and paper, Egyptian dhows carrying cotton and sugar, Black Sea traders with grain and slaves, Persian merchants with carpets and turquoise. The docks are chaos rendered into a kind of order through centuries of practice. Customs officials in green turbans check manifests written in Ottoman Turkish, a language that borrows from Arabic, Persian, and Turkish in equal measure. Translators shout in Greek, Italian, Arabic, Armenian. A fight breaks out between two porters competing for the same job. It ends when a Janissary appears, his tall white hat marking his status, his hand on his sword. The fighters separate instantly. No one challenges a Janissary. No one wants to disappear into the dungeons beneath the Topkapi Palace. Mehmet secures work hauling spice sacks for a merchant named Ibrahim. The sacks smell of cinnamon and black pepper, commodities worth more than their weight in silver. Ibrahim is a Muslim, but his business partner is a Greek Christian named Stavros. This is common. The empire's commercial life transcends religious boundaries because profit speaks a universal language. They argue prices in a mixture of Turkish and Greek, gesturing wildly, then embrace and share coffee. That bitter drink, recently arrived from Yemen, that is becoming the empire's obsession. Coffee houses are springing up everywhere, places where men sit for hours, smoking tobacco through water pipes, playing backgammon, discussing poetry and politics in equal measure. By midday, Mehmet has made enough to buy bread and a small piece of mutton for his family. The bread is dark, heavy with barley and millet, nothing like the white bread eaten in the palace. The meat is gristly, but it is meat, which means this is a good day. His son, 10-year-old Yusuf, should be working beside him, learning the trade. But Ake has convinced Mehmet to let the boy attend the neighborhood school attached to the local mosque. The imam teaches reading, writing, basic mathematics, and Quranic verses. It is free education, available to any Muslim boy, one of the empire's revolutionary innovations. Knowledge, the Sultan's advisors believe, strengthens the state. In the afternoon heat, the city slows. Those who can afford it retreat indoors, behind thick walls that hold the coolness of morning like a cupped hand holds water. The hammams, the public baths, fill with people seeking relief. These bathhouses are segregated by sex and serve as much as social centers as places of hygiene. In the women's section, Ake scrubs herself with olive oil soap, sits in steam rooms tiled with geometric patterns that seem to shift in the vapor, and exchanges news with neighbors. She learns that the Sultan's fleet has left for the Mediterranean, that bread prices are rising again, that the daughter of the cloth merchant has been married to a tax collector from Edirne. Information flows through these female networks as efficiently as through any government courier system. The empire's infrastructure is staggering. Roads built by Roman emperors still carry Ottoman traffic. New bridges span rivers that previously stopped armies. Caravanserais, those fortified inns, dot the trade routes every 30 miles, offering safety, food, and stables. The postal system can carry a message from Constantinople to Damascus in 10 days. Aqueducts bring fresh water to cities. The Suleimani Mosque, still under construction, will have a complex that includes a hospital, schools, a soup kitchen for the poor, and public latrines. The empire builds for eternity, but eternity is always threatened. In the countryside beyond Constantinople's walls, peasants till soil their ancestors have worked for 1,000 years. They are mostly Christians, paying taxes to Muslim landlords who live in distant cities. The system is feudal in practice, if not in name. The Sipahi cavalry receive land grants in exchange for military service. They collect taxes from the peasants, keep a portion for themselves, and use the rest to maintain horses, weapons, and armor. When the Sultan calls, they must ride to war, bringing with them retinues of armed men drawn from the same peasantry they govern. These peasants live in villages of mud brick houses with thatched roofs. They rise before dawn and work until dark. Their diet is bread, onions, olives, occasional cheese. Meat is a festival luxury. Disease moves through their villages like a scythe through wheat, dysentery, smallpox, tuberculosis. A cut that becomes infected can mean death. Childbirth kills. Mothers sew regularly that having 3 wives in a lifetime is common for men who survive past 40. Children die with such frequency that parents often wait years before becoming too attached. Before investing too much hope in these small, fragile lives, yet life persists. Weddings happen, elaborate affairs lasting days, where whole villages gather to eat, dance, and forget briefly the hardness of existence. Harvest festivals mark the seasons. Religious holidays structure the year. Muslim villages celebrate Eid. Christian villages celebrate Easter and Christmas under Ottoman protection. Jewish communities observe Shabbat and high holidays. The empire absorbs them all, demands taxes and obedience, and mostly leaves local customs intact. In the eastern provinces, beyond the Euphrates, the empire's grip loosens into something more fluid, more negotiated. Here, Kurdish tribal chiefs maintain semi-autonomy, pledging loyalty to the Sultan but governing themselves according to ancient customs. Arab Bedouin tribes roam deserts as they have for millennia, their loyalty purchased with subsidies and the promise of protection from Persian raiders. The Safavid Empire of Persia stands as the Ottomans' greatest rival. Separated by religion, by the ancient schism between Sunni and Shia Islam that has bled into politics and war. The border between these two empires is written in blood, redrawn with each generation, marked by fortresses and the bones of soldiers who died fighting over theological interpretations and territorial ambitions dressed in religious certainty. The Janissaries who garrison these border forts live hard lives. They are hundreds of miles from Constantinople's pleasures, stationed in stone fortresses that bake under summer suns and freeze in winter. They receive their salaries irregularly, supplementing income by taxing passing caravans or engaging in trade themselves. Some take local wives despite regulations forbidding it, creating families they cannot legally claim. Their sons cannot become Janissaries, that privilege reserved for the Devshirme system. That methodical collection of Christian boys transformed into Muslim warriors. It is brutal efficiency, stripping children from villages in the Balkans, separating them from language, family, and faith, remaking them into instruments of empire. Yet some of these boys will rise to become Grand Viziers. Proof that in the Ottoman system, slaves can become masters, that merit sometimes trumps birth. In the Hungarian territories recently conquered, the transition from Christian to Ottoman rule is raw and violent. Villages burned during the conquest still show blackened timbers. Fields lie fallow because the men who work them are dead or enslaved. Hungarian nobles who resisted have had their lands confiscated and given to Ottoman administrators. Those who submitted early retain their estates but pay heavy tribute. The Catholic Church finds its monasteries converted to mosques, its bells melted for cannon. Priests who refuse to flee or convert are killed or enslaved. The peasants, as always, suffer most. They exchange one master for another and discover that oppression wears many flags. Yet even here, patterns emerge. Within a generation, some Hungarian merchants will grow rich serving as intermediaries between Ottoman and European trade. Some Hungarian soldiers will join Ottoman armies, fighting former countrymen for steady pay. The empire has a genius for absorption, for turning enemies into subjects, subjects into participants. It offers a bargain: submit, pay taxes, follow certain rules, and keep your religion, your language, your local customs. Many accept. The alternative is often destruction in the shipyards of the Golden Horn. Workers construct the vessels that make the Ottoman Empire a maritime power. The Tur-Sinai Amir employs thousands, shipwrights who learn their craft from fathers and grandfathers, sealmakers whose workshops smell of canvas and tar, rope makers whose hands are permanently stained from hemp fibers, blacksmiths who forge anchors and chains in furnaces that turn night into day. These men work under military discipline. The arsenal produces a new galley every week during war preparation. These ships, powered by oars and sail, carry the empire's power across the Mediterranean, challenge Venetian dominance, raid Spanish coasts, and transport armies to distant battlefields. The rowers who power these galleys are slaves and convicts, men condemned to perhaps the worst labor in the empire, chained to benches, rowing in synchronized rhythm dictated by a drum fed on hardtack and water, sleeping where they sit. Many die at their oars from exhaustion, disease, or enemy action. During battle, they cannot flee, cannot defend themselves, can only row harder while cannon shot smashes through hulls and Greek fire turns the sea into flame. A galley slave who survives 5 years is either extraordinarily fortunate or extraordinarily cursed, having lived through horrors that should have killed him. Back in Constantinople, in the courtyards of the Topkapi Palace, the Sultan's world operates by entirely different rules. Here, thousands of servants maintain a complex as large as a small city. The harem houses the Sultan's mother, who wields enormous political power, his wives, his concubines, his daughters, his sisters. These women are not prisoners in the Western sense. Many are educated, literate, politically astute. The Sultan's mother, the valid Sultan, often advises on state matters, controls vast wealth, and influences appointments. Concubines who bear sons become potential queen mothers. The competition is ruthless, conducted through poison, intrigue, and alliance. Sons compete for their father's favor, knowing that when the Sultan dies, the new Sultan traditionally has his brothers executed to prevent civil war. It is pragmatic brutality. Trading individual lives for dynastic stability, the Sultan himself is simultaneously absolute ruler and prisoner of protocol. His day is choreographed. When he wakes, what he wears, who he sees, how he eats. He appears in the Divan Council, hidden behind a grilled window, listening unseen as his ministers debate. He emerges only to render judgment. This cultivates mystique, makes him seem omniscient above mortal concerns. Yet he is human. Suleiman writes poetry, patronizes artists, studies law, and personally leads armies into battle, sleeping in tents with his soldiers, sharing their hardships. He is both god-king and warrior, scholar and conqueror, a contradiction the empire somehow sustains. In the Grand Bazaar, the empire's commercial heart beats loudest. 4,000 shops organized by trade, goldsmiths here, leather workers there, spice merchants in covered lanes that trap scents until the air itself tastes of cardamom and saffron. Prices are negotiated through elaborate rituals of offer and counteroffer. Insult and flattery, the drinking of tea and the swearing of oaths. A carpet seller from Anatolia haggles with a Venetian merchant over a silk rug dyed with cochineal beetles from Mexico, traded through Spanish intermediaries. The carpet will travel to Venice, then perhaps to France or England, carrying Ottoman artistry to distant courts. The payment, Venetian ducats stamped with Christian imagery, will be melted down and reminted as Ottoman currency. The circle of commerce consuming and transforming everything nearby. In the slave market, human beings are bought and sold with less ceremony than carpets. Africans captured by Arab raiders, Slavs taken in border wars, Circassians sold by their own impoverished families. They stand on auction blocks while buyers examine teeth, muscles, skin. Young women bring highest prices, destined for harems or domestic service. Strong men go to hard labor or military training. Children are investment purchases, bought young to be trained in specific skills. Some slaves will eventually buy their freedom, a legal right in Islamic law. Others will die in bondage. The cruelty is casual, normalized, accepted as the natural order. Every civilization in this era practices slavery. The Ottomans are neither better nor worse, merely more efficient. As evening falls, the call to prayer again echoes across Constantinople. Mehmet the porter walks home with his day's earnings, enough to keep his family fed for 3 more days. Yusuf runs to greet him, reciting verses from the Quran he learned that day. Ake has prepared a stew of lentils and onions stretched with bread. They eat together on the floor of their single room, and for this moment, they are content. They do not dream of conquest or empire. They dream of simpler things. Yusuf learning to read well enough to become a clerk, perhaps even entering palace service. A daughter who might marry a shopkeeper instead of a porter. A roof that does not leak when winter rains come. Across the city, in countless rooms, similar scenes unfold. The wealthy eat from porcelain plates, the poor from wooden bowls, but all eat. The empire, for all its violence and hierarchy, maintains order. The roads are safe from bandits because bandits are impaled on stakes as warnings. The grain supplies are managed to prevent famine. The courts, while partial to Muslims, at least exist and follow law rather than pure caprice. It is not justice as we understand it, but it is predictable, which is its own form of mercy. The empire's success lies not in its perfection, but in its systems. The Devshirme creates loyal administrators with no local ties to corrupt them. The millet system lets religious communities govern themselves in exchange for taxes and loyalty. The timur system ties military service to land, creating a cavalry force without bankrupting the treasury. The Grand Bazaar concentrates trade, making taxation efficient. Even slavery serves systematic purpose, providing labor while offering legal paths to freedom that prevent total desperation. These systems are not humane by modern standards, but they work, they endure, they allow an empire spanning 3 continents to function. But on this night in 1520, the Ottoman Empire stands supreme. Its armies are undefeated. Its treasury is full. Its systems function. From Constantinople, the Sultan's will radiates outward, through governors and generals, through tax collectors and judges. Through the network of roads and fortresses and laws that bind millions of people into a single, vast, functioning entity. It is an empire built on conquest, but maintained by administration. Powered by faith, but pragmatic in practice. Brutal in its methods, but offering a kind of order. A structure within which life, however hard, remains possible.